Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, I invite you to travel back in time with me. Not to the front lines of war, not to the thunder of cannons or the roar of airplanes, but to the quiet corners of everyday life. Imagine a small kitchen dimly lit by a single bulb. A kettle hums softly on the stove. On the table lies a small booklet, its cover plain, its pages thin. This is the ration book. For millions of families during World War II, this little book was the difference between hunger and survival. As you listen, let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into the mattress. Tonight's story is not about fear or violence. It is about patience, creativity, and the quiet courage of ordinary people. We will walk together through the ration. Lines peek into the kitchens where mothers stretched a single egg into a family meal, and wander into the gardens where children planted seeds of hope. We will read the letters that carried love across oceans, and we will end with the gentle reminder that even in the darkest times, humanity found ways to endure. So close your eyes, and let the rhythm of history guide you into sleep. Faint ticking clock, soft rain in background. Or Chapter 1. The Ration Book. Let us begin with the ration book itself. Picture it. A small pocket-sized booklet issued by the government. Its cover was plain, often stamped with the family's name and address. Inside, rows of coupons and stamps waited to be torn away, each one representing a small portion of food. Without this book, you could not buy essentials. With it, you could claim your weekly share. A little bread, a little sugar, a little butter, sometimes a few ounces of meat. The ration book was more than paper. It was a lifeline. Imagine a mother standing at the counter of a shop. She opens her ration book carefully, her fingers tracing the thin paper. The shopkeeper tears out a coupon, places it in a box, and hands her a small bag of flour. The child beside her watches closely, learning that food is not taken for granted. Every stamp was precious. Families guarded their ration books as carefully as they guarded money. To lose it was unthinkable. Without it, a family could go hungry. The ration book taught lessons that lasted a lifetime: patience, discipline, and gratitude. Even decades later, people who lived through rationing remembered the feeling of holding that little booklet, and the quiet relief of knowing it meant survival. Chapter 2. The First Days of Rationing. When rationing was first introduced, many people were anxious. How would they manage? Would there be enough food? The government reassured citizens that rationing was fair. Everyone, rich or poor, received the same amount. A duke and a factory worker stood equal in the ration line. At first, people were surprised by how little they received. 2 ounces of butter per week, 4 ounces of bacon, a single egg, sometimes replaced by powdered egg. Yet slowly families adjusted. They learned to stretch ingredients, to substitute, to make do. Imagine opening your cupboard and finding only a small bag of flour, a few potatoes, and a tin of powdered milk. What would you cook? Families asked themselves this question every day, and somehow they always found an answer. Chapter 3. The Emotional Weight. Rationing was not only about food, it was about emotions. Children learned to value every crumb. Mothers worried constantly about feeding their families. Fathers, returning from long shifts, accepted meals that were small but lovingly prepared. There was pride, too. Pride in making something from nothing. Pride in sharing with neighbors. Pride in enduring hardship together. The ration book became a symbol of unity. Everyone carried one. Everyone waited in line. Everyone knew the taste of scarcity. And yet, within that scarcity, there was a strange kind of equality. For once, wealth could not buy more food. Everyone was bound by the same rules, the same limits, the same quiet struggle. Chapter 4: A Day in the Life. Let us walk through a single day in the life of a family under rationing. It is morning. The mother wakes early, boiling water for tea. She measures the leaves carefully, just enough for one pot. Sugar is scarce, so she stirs in only half a spoonful. Breakfast is simple: a slice of bread, lightly spread with margarine. Perhaps a small piece of jam, if the family has saved enough coupons. At midday, the children return from school. Lunch is vegetable soup, thin but warm. Potatoes, carrots, and cabbage simmer together, seasoned with a pinch of salt. Dinner is the main meal. Tonight, it is a pie made from leftover vegetables, thickened with flour, baked until golden. It is not luxurious, but it fills the stomach. As the family eats, they talk quietly. They laugh, they share stories, they make plans for tomorrow. The food may be plain, but the togetherness is rich. This was the rhythm of life under rationing. Simple meals, shared with love day after day. Part 2: The queue and creative cooking. The quiet ritual of the queue. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a narrow street in a small town. It is just after dawn. The light is soft and gray, and the air carries the faint scent of last night's rain. A handful of people stand together outside a bakery, coats buttoned, scarves pulled snug, hands folded over ration books. They speak in gentle voices, or not at all. This is the queue, an ordinary line that in those days became a daily ritual of patience. The queue taught a rhythm: arrive early, wait quietly, accept the day's allotment, and return home with gratitude. There were no shortcuts. A mother with 2 children stood behind a factory worker. A school teacher waited behind a gardener. The line leveled everyone. There was dignity in it, if you looked closely. An unspoken agreement that we share scarcity fairly. Listen for the soft sounds: the shuffle of shoes on stone, the creak of a shop door, the delicate tear of a coupon from a ration book. Sometimes the shopkeeper would nod and say, "Just in time." Sometimes they would apologize, "We've run out." People understood. They did not scold. They did not shout. They simply adjusted and promised themselves they would return tomorrow. There were strategies, of course. A neighbor might whisper, "Go to the grocer 2 lanes over. His delivery arrives on Wednesdays." Another might suggest a time of day when the line is shorter. But even strategies bowed to reality. The queue was a test of patience, not a puzzle to be solved. Children learned this early. They watched adults endure a long wait for a single loaf of bread, and they understood that value is not measured by abundance alone. The queue had its own kindness. Someone would hold a place for an elderly person who needed to sit for a while. A parent, having reached the counter, might turn and hand a spare coupon to a family behind them, knowing that generosity keeps communities whole. In those moments, scarcity revealed its opposite: a quiet abundance of care. And when it was finally your turn, when the counter was inches away and the shopkeeper looked up, you would feel a small flutter of relief. The ration book opened like a passport to a simpler victory: flour, sugar, butter, tea. With each item placed gently on the counter, a household's day took shape. You would fold the bag closed, tuck the ration book away, and step back into the soft morning light. Some lines were longer than others. Bread attracted crowds. Sugar drew careful rationers. Eggs, when they appeared, made the queue grow like a vine. But every line ended at a door, and behind that door stood a person who had promised to serve fairly. There was trust, and that trust made the line bearable. In the queue, people shared stories, not grand tales, but humble news. "My tomatoes are finally sprouting. I tried a carrot pudding last night. The children loved it. We're saving a little sugar for a birthday." These stories spread like warmth, and the line became more than a place of waiting. It became a corridor of hope, where small victories were celebrated and new ideas found eager listeners. If you listen closely, you will hear another sound. Beneath the rustle of paper and the murmur of voices, the sound of breath. The queue was a place where people took careful breaths, steady and slow, reminding themselves to be calm. In a world of sudden change and harsh headlines, the line outside the bakery offered a stable ritual. One foot, then another, one person after another, until at last, it was your turn. Garcer homeward with small treasures. The walk home after a successful queue carried a lightness. A bag not heavy but meaningful. A list not long but promising. People did not hurry. They savored the promise of a meal gently forming in their minds. A child might ask, "What will we make today?" A parent would smile and say, "Something simple. Something good." At the doorstep, the bag was set on the table as carefully as a gift. The ration book returned to its drawer, a small, trusted guardian. Then came the quiet inventory. Flour enough for bread or dumplings, a spoon of sugar to brighten tea, a pat of butter to transform plain toast, a handful of carrots waiting to be peeled and sliced. Each item held potential, like notes waiting to become a song. The kitchen under rationing was a workshop of invention. Measuring cups became instruments of balance. Recipes became letters of guidance. Hands became instruments of grace. People learned not only what to cook, but how to think about cooking. Waste was the enemy. Patience was the friend. Creativity was the bridge that joined scarcity to satisfaction. Creative cooking, making flavor from little now. Settle in and let us enter a kitchen in the early evening, where a parent ties on an apron and sets a pot on the stove. The flame is low and steady. The first ingredient is not flour or carrot or potato. It is time. A slow meal begins with the acceptance that good things happen steadily. Creative cooking under rationing followed 3 ideas. Stretch. Make one ingredient serve many meals. A potato becomes part of soup, part of pie, part of tomorrow's breakfast hash. Substitute. Replace what you lack with what you have. When sugar is scarce, sweetness comes from grated carrot or stewed apple. When eggs are limited, powdered egg stands in quietly. Season softly. Herbs, onion, bay leaf, a pinch of salt, all gentle ways to lift flavor without relying on rich ingredients. Let's breathe into a few dishes. Humble, calm and tender. Carrot pudding, softly sweet. Imagine a pudding born from a garden rather than a sugar bowl. Carrots grated fine. Release a natural sweetness when cooked slowly. A parent warms a pot, adds a pat of butter or margarine, and stirs the carrot gently with a splash of milk. A pinch of flour thickens the mixture. A whisper of cinnamon or nutmeg, if available, gives the aroma a comforting roundness. The pudding simmers and the kitchen fills with a gentle, warm smell. No one rushes it. A pudding made from carrots rewards those who trust the time it needs. When it is ready, the spoon sinks in softly. Children gather with quiet eagerness, and the first bite brings surprise. Sweetness from a vegetable, warmth from simple things, joy from the patient craft of cooking. Carrot pudding was more than dessert. It was proof that flavor can be coaxed from unexpected places, that care can turn scarcity into delight. Families remembered these puddings not because they were luxurious, but because they were loved. Potato pie. A golden, humble comfort pie made mostly from potatoes sounds plain until you watch it take shape. A parent slices potatoes thin, then layers them like pages in a book. Potato, onion, carrot, a sprinkle of flour, a drizzle of milk. The crust might be simple, breadcrumbs and a bit of fat, or a thin pastry made from rationed flour. Into the oven it goes, and the house becomes a warm room of anticipation. As the pie bakes, the top turns golden, and the edges crisp just enough to offer a gentle bite. When it is placed on the table, there is a hush, followed by the soft scrape of forks. Flavor comes from patience and the companionship of ingredients. potato and onion, milk and salt, all agreeing to become something more together than alone. Potato pie asked for little and gave much. It taught a lesson often forgotten in richer times, that food is not only about ingredients, but about intention. Mock goose, simplicity wearing a brave name. There were dishes whose names carried humor, the kind that makes a family smile while they eat. Mock goose was one of them. Instead of meat, it combined lentils, potatoes, and onion, seasoned carefully, baked into a loaf, sliced and served with gravy made from browned flour and stock. It was brave in its honesty. No one pretended it tasted like goose. The name was a wink, a promise that the meal would feel special even if it was humble. A slice of mock goose on a plate offered firmness and warmth. A drizzle of gravy gave comfort, served beside carrots or cabbage. It became the kind of dinner that made people lean back, breathe out and say, "That was good." Not extraordinary, not opulent. Good in the way a steady hand is good, or a lamp in the window is good. Powdered eggs, adapting without complaint eggs were precious. Sometimes they vanished from shops entirely, replaced by tins of powdered egg. Many wrinkled their noses at first. How could powder replace an egg? But a cook with patience learned the method. Whisk the powder with water until smooth, let it rest, then cook gently with a touch of fat and a sprinkle of salt. For baking, it worked well enough. For scrambling, it demanded kindness. Low heat, slow stirring, and an acceptance that texture mattered less than nourishment. A parent might promise a Sunday scramble, if the week allowed it. Children gathered at the table smiling at the treat that arrived not easily, but with effort. In this way, powdered egg became a small reminder that spirits can remain soft even when conditions are firm. The kitchen's quiet choreography, creative cooking was a dance, and the kitchen was the stage. Listen to the steps, a knife tapping gently on a wooden board, water pouring in a thin silver stream, a spoon moving through soup, drawing circles that calm the mind, oven door opening with a soft exhale of heat, plates placed with care, one after another. Everything had a pace, no sudden movements. Meals came together like lullabies. A bay leaf floated in broth like a boat on a still pond. Steam rose from a kettle like a slow breath. Butter melted across warm bread like morning sunlight sliding across a floor. Those who cooked discovered that food becomes tender when time is kind. Onions turned sweet when left alone to soften. Carrots yielded their flavor gently when simmered without rush. Potatoes sliced carefully, baked into layers that held together the way families do, each thin piece supporting the next, forming a whole, teaching through hunger. Children in the kitchen under rationing. Children learned without lectures. They learned by watching a parent weigh sugar on a small scale, by noticing how a spoonful can feel heavy when it is rare. They learned by peeling vegetables, by stirring soup, by setting the table with pride. They learned to finish meals not because they were told to, but because they understood the effort behind each bite. A child might announce, "We have enough for a cake next week if we save our sugar." The family would nod and agree to sweetness deferred. When the day finally arrived, the cake, simple, modest, tasted like celebration itself. There were fewer treats, but their meaning multiplied. Under rationing, joy was concentrated, like a sauce simmered long and slow. Children also learned the art of substitutions. They found wonder in discovering that applesauce can replace fat in a cake, that mashed potato can lend moisture to bread, that tea can give a delicate tannin to stewed fruit. The world widened, not narrowed, because limitation forced curiosity. Flavor without excess. Herbs, stocks, and toasts. When rich ingredients are scarce, flavor travels new paths. A handful of parsley became a treasure. A sprig of thyme, a bay leaf, and onion browned slowly. These were maps that guided meals toward satisfaction. Cooks collected herb leaves in small jars, dried them on windowsills, shared them in envelopes with neighbors, stock made from vegetable peels. Carrot tops, onion skins, and the ends of celery became a nourishing foundation. A pot of simmering scraps whispered a promise. Nothing is wasted here. Everything contributes. Strained through a cloth and seasoned gently, this broth entered soups, gravies, and stews, lifting them with the magic of depth. Toasts, too, became instruments of pleasure. A slice of bread, crisped gently and brushed with a bit of fat, transformed a bowl of soup from plain to delightful. Crouton, tiny toasts dropped into broth, offered a playful crunch, reminding eaters that texture is a cousin of flavor, and both belong at the table. Sweetness saved. Birthdays and quiet celebrations. Scarcity made celebration rare and therefore precious. Families planned months ahead for a birthday cake. Sugar saved bit by bit, flour weighed with care, a precious egg reserved. The day before the birthday, the kitchen became a chapel. Ingredients were laid out. The oven preheated like a candle lit. Silence fell as the batter smoothed into the pan. When the cake emerged, golden fragrant, the family gathered. There might be no icing or just a thin glaze sweetened with jam. The first slice carried not only flavor but the quiet joy of persistence. A birthday under rationing told a child, without speeches, that love does not weaken under pressure. It finds new ways to speak. Evening celebrations sometimes took place over tea. A table arranged with small pleasures, thin slices of bread with jam, a few biscuits saved for the day, stewed fruit glistening softly. A parent poured tea as if conducting a ceremony, and the family honored the moment without needing decorations or noise. Radio kitchens and pamphlet wisdom guidance traveled through the airwaves and in thin paper leaflets. Radio programs offered wartime recipes, spoken in gentle tones by hosts who understood the value of calm instruction. Listeners wrote down each step: how to make a nourishing stew from pantry scraps, how to bake without butter, how to replace sugar with fruit. Pamphlets arrived in homes like little teachers. They recommended saving drippings for flavor, drying herbs for winter, storing root vegetables in cool places. Families read them together, nodding at advice that respected both the stomach and the spirit. No one felt shamed for wanting pleasure. The pamphlet simply showed how pleasure could be found in honest, humble ways. The ethics of the table. Fairness and sharing under rationing. Ethics entered the kitchen quietly. Sharing became a household rule. If you had a little extra, you gave a little away. If a neighbor lost a ration book or missed a delivery, others helped fill the gap. People understood that trust is as nourishing as soup, and that communities stay strong when plates are not guarded like gold. Fairness mattered. Families explained to children why portions were equal, why the last slice was offered to the guest, why the person who cooked sometimes ate last to make sure everyone else was satisfied. These lessons settled deep in hearts and remained there long after rationing disappeared. Table manners also adapted to scarcity. No one mocked a simple meal. No one complained loudly. Gratitude became good etiquette. A thank you spoken with sincerity. A plate lifted carefully to avoid spills. A table wiped clean with appreciation. These small behaviors turned kitchens into classrooms of kindness. Calm recipes. Gentle steps. Let's cradle a few calm, bedtime-friendly recipe flows. The kind you can narrate softly. The kind that's steady in evening. Wartime vegetable soup. Prepare. Wash carrots, potatoes, cabbage. Peel only what is necessary. Save peels for stock. Simmer. Add vegetables to a pot with water and a bay leaf. Bring to a gentle boil, then lower the heat. Let thyme be your main ingredient. Season. A pinch of salt, a few herb leaves, perhaps a spoon of drippings for depth. Reserve. Ladle slowly. Add a piece of toast to each bowl. Watch shoulders relax around the table. Carrot tea cake, light and simple. Mix. Grated carrots. A modest spoon of sugar or stewed apple for sweetness. Flour, powdered egg, and a small amount of fat. Spice. A whisper of cinnamon if you have it. Baking. Low and steady heat. Patience is the glaze. Heartfelt. Thin slices, smiles thick as icing. Potato and onion bake. Layer. Sliced potatoes and onions, each layer dusted with flour, sprinkled with salt, and moistened with milk. Top. Breadcrumbs tossed with a touch of fat. Bake, until edges crisp and the center is tender. Remember, a simple dish can calm a complicated day. Narrating such recipes in a video allows viewers to breathe with the rhythm of each step, to feel the comfort of order in a world that sometimes feels disordered. The evening table, a safe harbor. When the day's work ended and the cue's patience had ripened into dinner, the table became a safe harbor. Plates were set in quiet rows. Cups stood ready for tea. A serving spoon waited to lift warmth from pot to bowl. Candles were not necessary. The light over the table was enough. Talk was not forced. Silence was welcome. The meal asked nothing more than presence. People learned to savor without comparison. The soup was not measured against a feast. The pie was not judged against a banquet. It was enough because it was shared, and because care had been folded into it like an ingredient. After dinner, a parent might say, "Let's plan tomorrow." The plan was simple: a visit to the grocer, a check on the garden, a hopeful glance at the cupboard. Plans felt gentle, like a hand placed softly on a shoulder. Creativity as courage under rationing. Creativity was courage. It said, "We will not let scarcity erase our joy. We will cook slowly. We will share fairly. We will celebrate small victories. We will teach our children that grace can live in simple rooms." This courage did not roar. It did not seek attention. It moved quietly from kitchen to table, from garden to pantry, from cue to home. It was visible in the way a spoon stirred a pot, in the way a hand offered bread, in the way a child's eyes brightened at the sight of a pudding made from carrots. When people look back on those years, they remember hunger and hardship, yes. But they also remember gentle evenings, steady meals, and the deep, abiding satisfaction of making something good from very little. A soft pause before the next chapter as we close part 2. Let your body relax into the bed and your breath settle. You have stood in the queue. You have walked home with small treasures, and you have watched creative cooking turn scarcity into comfort. In the next part, we will step into the soil, into victory gardens, and we will read letters that carried hope like lanterns across dark nights. For now, let the kitchen's gentle music linger, the spoon's soft circles, the kettle's quiet hum, the oven's warm sigh. Rest in the knowledge that ordinary hands kept communities nourished, and that patience, like a well-tended garden, always bears fruit. Part 3. The soil is salvation. Step with me now into a small patch of earth behind a modest home. The war has tightened supplies, ration books grow thinner, and yet here in the soil lies a quiet answer. These were called victory gardens. Every patch of land, backyards, schoolyards, even public parks, was transformed into rows of vegetables. Families bent low, hands in the dirt, planting seeds of survival. A cabbage here, a row of carrots there, beans climbing poles, potatoes hidden beneath the soil. The garden was more than food. It was therapy. It was hope. It was proof that life could still grow in the shadow of war. The rhythm of the garden. Imagine the rhythm of tending a garden. Early morning watering, the soft hiss of a can sprinkling droplets onto thirsty soil, the quiet tug of weeds pulled from the earth, the patient waiting as green shoots push upward day by day. Children learned seasons not from books, but from watching beans curl around sticks, from seeing tomatoes blush red in the sun. Grandparents, once farmers, passed down wisdom. Plant deep, water steady, harvest gently. The garden became a classroom, a sanctuary, and a pantry all at once. And when harvest came, the joy was not loud. It was quiet, steady, grateful. Sharing the harvest. Victory gardens were not private treasures. They were shared. A neighbor might bring over a basket of cucumbers. Another might trade onions for carrots. Communities became networks of exchange where generosity replaced greed. Imagine a table where a family lays out their harvest. Potatoes, beans, a few apples. They divide them carefully, setting aside a portion for a neighbor who has less. In this way, the garden fed not only bodies, but trust. Preserving for tomorrow. Harvest was only half the story. The other half was preservation. Families learned to bottle, pickle, and store. Jars lined shelves like jewels. Carrots in brine, beans sealed tight, apples stewed into sauce. The sound of lids popping sealed was a sound of security. Each jar meant another meal in winter, another night without hunger. Children watched with fascination as fruit transformed into jam, as cucumbers became pickles, as tomatoes turned into sauce. Preservation was patience made visible. Letters across the distance. Now, let us leave the garden and step into a quiet room where a person sits at a table, pen in hand, paper before them. They begin to write, "Dearest, today we planted potatoes." The children laughed as they dug in the soil. "I saved a little sugar for your return. We miss you dearly." Letters were lifelines. They carried not only words but love, memory, and hope. Soldiers at the front read them slowly, savoring each line. Families at home waited anxiously for replies, holding envelopes as if they were treasures. Relaxation, the language of hope. 85 Salern. Letters often spoke of small things, the weather, the garden, the meals cooked from rations. But within those small things lay great meaning. A line about a child's laughter reminded a soldier why they fought. A note about a birthday cake baked with saved sugar reminded families that joy still existed. Hope was written in ink, folded into envelopes, and carried across oceans. Even when letters were delayed, the act of writing them was healing. To write was to believe in tomorrow. Reading by candlelight. Picture a family gathered around a table at night. A candle flickers. The mother opens a letter, her voice steady as she reads aloud. "My dearest, I dream of the garden. I dream of the smell of bread baking. I dream of sitting at our table again." The children listen, eyes wide, hearts warmed. For a moment, the war fades. The letter becomes a bridge carrying love across distance, across fear, across time. And so the garden and the letter became twin symbols of survival. One grew food from the earth. The other grew hope from the heart. Together they nourished body and soul. Together they reminded families that even in scarcity, there is abundance of care, of patience, of love. As you rest tonight, imagine the soft soil beneath your hands, the gentle scratch of a pen on paper, the sound of a letter being read aloud. Let these images carry you into calm sleep, knowing that hope, like a seed, always finds a way to grow. Part 4. Children. Daily life and quiet celebrations. The children of rationing. Close your eyes and imagine a child in the 1940s. Their world is smaller than ours, but no less vivid. They wake to the sound of a kettle whistling, the smell of toast made from rationed bread, and the sight of their mother carefully measuring sugar into a tin. For children, rationing was not a burden. It was simply life. They did not compare it to abundance because abundance was a memory they never knew. Instead, they learned lessons quietly through observation. They learned patience by standing in queues. They learned gratitude by finishing every crumb on their plate. They learned creativity by helping in the kitchen, peeling carrots, stirring soups, and saving scraps for tomorrow. A child's toy might be a wooden block, a skipping rope, or a ball made from rags. Yet their imagination filled the gaps. They played in the streets, in gardens, in bomb shelters, inventing games that required nothing but laughter and companionship. And when food was scarce, they learned resilience. A birthday cake with no icing was still a cake. A single sweet shared among siblings was still joy. Childhood adapted, and in adapting, it grew strong. School and learning. Schools continued, though supplies were limited. Children brought lunches wrapped in paper, a sandwich with carrot spread, perhaps an apple if the season allowed. Teachers reminded them to eat slowly, to savor. Lessons often included practical skills. Girls and boys alike learned cooking, sewing, gardening. They were taught not only arithmetic and reading, but also how to stretch food, how to mend clothes, how to grow vegetables. Education became survival training, but it was delivered with kindness. Imagine a classroom where the blackboard lists not only sums and spelling words, but also a recipe for wartime stew. Children copied it carefully, knowing they might cook it at home that evening. In this way, schools became extensions of the home, reinforcing the values of patience, thrift, and cooperation. Daily rhythms of family life. Life under rationing followed a rhythm. Mornings began with tea, lightly sweetened if sugar was available. Breakfast was simple: porridge, bread, or a slice of toast. Afternoons were filled with work, school, and chores. Mothers queued for food. Fathers labored in factories or fields. Children studied or played. Evenings brought families together around the table. The table was the heart of the home. Meals were modest, but they were shared. Conversation flowed gently. News of the day, stories from neighbors, plans for tomorrow. After dinner, families gathered around the radio. Voices from afar filled the room: news, music, recipes, encouragement. The radio was more than entertainment. It was connection, a reminder that they were part of something larger. Bedtime came early. Candles or lamps were dimmed. Children drifted to sleep with the comfort of routine, even in uncertain times. Quiet celebrations. Celebrations under rationing were smaller, but perhaps more meaningful. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. They were marked not by abundance, but by intention. A birthday cake might be made with grated carrots instead of sugar, powdered egg instead of fresh. It might be small, but it was baked with love, and that love made it grand. Christmas brought special rations, a little extra sugar, dried fruit, perhaps a small piece of chocolate. Families decorated with handmade ornaments, paper chains, and evergreen branches. Gifts were simple: knitted scarves, carved toys, a book passed down, and yet the joy was real. Children's eyes lit up at the sight of a single orange, treasured as if it were gold. Families sang carols softly, their voices blending in harmony, filling the room with warmth. Celebration was not about excess. It was about presence. It was about pausing to say, we are still here together, and that is enough. The power of small joys. In times of scarcity, small joys became magnified. A spoonful of jam on bread, a cup of tea shared with a neighbor, a letter arriving in the post. These moments carried weight. They reminded people that life was not only about survival, but about savoring. Children laughed at simple games. Parents smiled at simple meals. Communities gathered for simple dances, concerts, or church services. Joy was not absent during rationing. It was simply quieter, gentler, more deliberate, and in its quietness it was perhaps more lasting. And so children grew strong in the soil of scarcity. Families found rhythm in modest meals. Communities discovered joy in small celebrations. Rationing did not erase happiness. It reshaped it. It taught that joy does not require abundance, only gratitude. As you rest tonight, imagine the laughter of children playing in the street, the warmth of a family gathered around a simple meal, the glow of a candle on a birthday cake. Let these images remind you that even in the hardest times, life finds ways to celebrate. Part 5. The Tapestry of Ordinary Courage. Now that we have walked together through ration books, queues, kitchens, gardens, and letters, let us pause and see the whole picture. World War II is often remembered for battles, for leaders, for strategies. But beneath those headlines lived millions of ordinary people, whose quiet courage was no less remarkable. They did not fight with weapons. They fought with patience. They fought with creativity. They fought with the steady rhythm of daily life. measuring sugar, planting seeds, writing letters, sharing meals. Their courage was not loud. It was not celebrated with medals. It was lived in kitchens, in gardens, in classrooms, in queues. And it was this courage that carried families through the long years of scarcity. The lessons of scarcity. Scarcity teaches lessons that abundance often hides. It teaches that value is not measured by size but by meaning. A single egg, carefully saved, can feel like treasure. A spoonful of sugar shared in tea can taste like joy. It teaches that creativity is born not from plenty but from limits. Carrot puddings, potato pies, mock goose, these were not luxuries, but they were loved. It teaches that community is stronger than isolation. Neighbors shared harvests, traded recipes, held places in queues, and read letters aloud together. And it teaches that hope is not fragile. Hope grows in gardens, in classrooms, in kitchens, in the hearts of children who laugh even when sweets are rare. These lessons, learned in the 1940s, remain true today. They remind us that resilience is not about strength alone, but about gentleness, patience, and care. The sound of evenings. Picture an evening in 1943. The day's work is done. The ration book is tucked away. The garden rests in twilight. Inside, a family gathers around the radio. The voice of a broadcaster fills the room, calm and steady. News is read, music plays, recipes are shared. The family listens together, sipping tea, eating bread with jam, nodding quietly. Later, the children prepare for bed. They brush their teeth with rationed toothpaste, slip under blankets, and listen to the soft murmur of their parents' voices in the next room. The house is modest, the food is simple, the times are hard, and yet there is peace. There is rhythm. There is love. This was the sound of evenings under rationing. Quiet, steady, human. The all-night drift. As you listen now, let yourself drift as they once did. Imagine the ticking of a clock, the creak of a chair, the hum of a kettle cooling on the stove. Imagine the smell of bread lingering in the air, the faint sweetness of jam, the earthy scent of potatoes stored in a sack. Imagine the softness of a letter held in hand, the warmth of a child's laughter, the calm of a garden at dusk. Let these images carry you, gently, into rest. If you wake in the night, the story will still be here, flowing softly, like a river that does not end. You may rejoin it at any point, and it will welcome you back with calm. And so rationing was not only about food, it was about life. It was about the quiet courage of ordinary people who endured hardship with patience, who found joy in small things, who built communities of care. Their story is not only history, it is a reminder that even in scarcity, there is abundance of love, of creativity, of hope. As you drift into sleep tonight, carry with you the lessons of their lives, that patience is powerful, that creativity is endless, that hope is unbreakable. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be gentle.